Okay, thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. First of all, we'd like to thank you, the European Commission, DigiConnect and ANATBA for bringing us together for this important event. And a warm welcome to everyone still online, also here in the room in Brussels, and those following the session. It's a pleasure to be here and also to moderate this session. Sustainability 2.0, digital product passports, carbon border adjustment mechanisms, European deforestation regulation, towards a verifiable environmental footprint. This conversation comes at a particularly important moment. Across Europe and globally, sustainability policy is moving from ambitious intentions to implementation. Frameworks such as the DPP, CBAM, and the EU deforestation regulation are designed to ensure that transparent, reliable, and environmental information from multiple stakeholders becomes operational across markets and supply chains, both locally and globally. So the question is no longer whether sustainability will be required. The real question is how we make environmental claims verifiable in practice across supply chains, across jurisdictions, and across systems that are increasingly underpin compliance, accountability, and trust. This panel brings together perspectives from global standard bodies, cross-standards coordination, environmental management, and climate implementation to explore exactly that challenge. May I ask each panelist to briefly introduce themselves? We'll go first online to Reyna.
Thank you, Limara. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Thank you for the invitation. And apologies that I cannot be with you in Brussels, but thank you for inviting me to be online. I'm Reyna Ubeda. I work for the International Telecommunication Union for the standardization sector, and I am the advisor of ITUT Study Group 5 on environment, climate change, and circular economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Reyna. Fiona, if you'd like to take the floor now.
Thanks, Limara. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me here. It's a total pleasure. I'm Fiona Delaney. I am a blockchain entrepreneur based in Dublin in Ireland. My company was originally founded in about 2018, working in the agri-blockchain space, which was the regulated context, more or less, at the time. It was before regulated DeFi. Over the years, I've worked quite a bit in DeFi, extending the compliance technology and capabilities of the blockchain service type infrastructure. And more recently, I've been looking at the circular economy, renewables, biochemicals, biocircularity, and capturing value across not just international boundaries, but also that circularity boundary, and looking at footprint management. And I'm also the current founder of a sustainable games platform called Tiny Wilderness, which is kind of gorgeous, and you should check it out.
Thank you, Thank you, Fiona. Claudia, if you take the floor now.
Thank you, Limara. Hello, everyone. I'm speaking today from the perspective of the ISO TC 207 Young Leadership Group. This is a pilot initiative created by ISO to bring young professionals into the standardization process. The idea behind this program is that also we might not have years of experience, we can contribute with new perspective and looking forward view. In my case, together with another colleague, I work on a project exploring the relationship between international standards and legislations and how environmental management standard can be support public policy and regulatory framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia. Now we'll go back online to Miroslav.
Everyone, greetings from Austria. I'm Miro Polzer. I have two institutional heads. One is that I'm the strategic director of the Climate Chain Coalition. It's a multi-stakeholder coalition which has been founded together with the UN Climate Change Secretariat to facilitate the uptake of emerging technologies, especially blockchain technology, in the context of global climate action governance. And my second hat is that I'm the founder and executive director of IAAI GLOTCHA. It's the International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges.
Thank you, everyone. I myself work within ISO TC 307, Senselect JTC 19, and as part of Kunfud, a co-founder of ANATPA, I'm the co-chair of the Sustainability and Innovation Working Group. Let us begin by setting the scene for this discussion. We now have increasing regulatory demand for sustainability-related data. The DPP, CBAM, and EU deforestation regulation are intended to make environmental claims generally verifiable across supply chains. But is that in fact reality? Let us ask the panelists for their perspective. Reyna, the Digital Product Passport began as a European regulatory initiative, but it is now clearly becoming part of a wider international conversation. From the perspective of ITUT, Study Group 5, what role do you feel international standards play in helping DPP-related environmental sustainability data become interoperable, trusted, and usable across borders? And how important is coordination across standard bodies if these systems are to scale globally?
Many thanks, Limara. And just to provide a brief overview of ITU, many of you know it, that is the UN Specialized Agency for Digital Technologies, bringing together governments, industry, academia, regulators, but also ITU is a standard development organization recognized by WTO. So this also makes the ITU standards also very inclusive because we have the participation from government, industry, and academia. ITUT Study Group 5, that is the group that develops standards on environment, climate change, and circular economy. One part of our, large part of our work is on methodologies for measuring and reporting environmental impact, including the ICT sector, greenhouse gas emission, energy efficiency of network data centers, life cycle environmental assessment, and digital technologies enabling climate action. This work helps to provide credible, standardized methodology that supports sustainability reporting and decision-making globally. And from when in the discussions that we have in ITU and in Study Group 5, we see the willing of the ICT sector in order to reduce their environmental impact. And why international standards matter in the digital product passport? Because digital product passports are a very important tool that they allow environmental information to travel with a product across the life cycle. So this is where standards become essential because standards provide common data structures and terminology, harmonized environmental metrics, interoperable digital infrastructure, and trusted methodologies for sustainability information. Within the Study Group 5 work, we have the work on develop 2 standards already from the ICT sector. One on the opportunities for digital product passport for the ICT for DPP, what are the benefits? And the other is what kind of information should the digital product passport has. And this second standard make reference to the EU DPP and also the work carried out by the UN Transparency Protocol developed by UNICE. This work is being developed together with ETSI as technically aligned standard. ETSI is the European Telecommunications Standardization Institute. Additionally, we are working on a global framework for digital product information system in collaboration with partners such as the UN Environmental Programme, One Planet Network, and other international stakeholders. So for us, it is important that even though, as you mentioned, the digital product passport has started in Europe, it has an international perspective. In addition, there is also the related work in exploring system architecture requirements and practical implementation case studies for DPP system in the ICT sector. So DPP ecosystem are highly interdisciplinary. And because of this coordination across different standardization bodies, but also different organizations is critical. And as I mentioned before, we do work in the development of standards together with ETSI. And we have the same standard, they are technically aligned. So this allows us also to avoid the market fragmentation, but we also exchange through liaison statement information with ISO, IC, and IEEE. As part of the ITU role and also as a UN agency, we collaborate with other UN entities working on this topic. Does this also help to avoid duplication? So thank you.
Thank you very much there. So in other words, the DPP is creating a bridge between different standard bodies and actors, stakeholders, both locally and now at a global level. Thank you very much for that, Reyna. Fiona, coming to you. You work across ISO, IEEE, and ITU, which is critical for the DPP, CBAM, EUDR, and are also leading work on emerging blockchain use cases linked to the SDG goals, including SDG 9, 11, and 16. From that cross-system perspective to achieve a verifiable environmental footprint, we often hear that sustainability systems require interoperability, but interoperability between what exactly? And where should the real alignment efforts begin?
Thanks, Limara. And to follow on from Reyna, I think Reyna's summary was really effective at giving insights into the operational qualities of what this standardization practice means. It's about data characteristics, data typing, taxonomies, vocabularies, that kind of thing. And sometimes when we're in the weeds, in particular as technologists, we forget that the purpose of this is to support industry, business, and to facilitate trade, I would say. On the other hand, I think one reading of the three instruments that we are talking about here is a kind of a protectionism of the European practice and standard. One reading of it would be that around whether it's the deforestation regulation or whether it's the carbon border adjustment mechanism, it is around at a minimum tracking what European indigenous industries are doing in terms of outsourcing and developing new business models, avoiding this. It's a deep-seated greenwashing. The risk is that there's a deep-seated greenwashing function there. And these instruments are marketplace interventions. And when we think about the operationalization of data interoperability, we can forget what that origin is and what, I'm not saying that marketplace intervention is a bad thing. Actually, I'm quite interested in the compliance technology and advancement of compliance technology and transparency. But I think I don't like getting caught up in the middleware of the standards operations. You know, other people can do that. I'm a business person. I work in the real world. And for me, innovation happens in the market when people buy something. We can innovate around systems or innovate around practices, but its effectiveness is in translation into business impact with growth and growth, sales, revenue, everything else. And that's what it needs to be for. Regulation is effective in defining markets, facilitating trade. Standardization must back that up, but it has to be for the purpose of creating new business. And tying that back to the topic, the title here around sustainability, we are moving into an increased context of pressure on planetary resources. And that means that interventions like the ones that are suggested, DPP and everything else, are around protecting that, reporting on that, and holding businesses accountable for it. We are technologists. Where is our equivalent of DPP? Where is our responsibility to build low footprint software? Where is our responsibility to constrain resources in AI orchestration models and constant upgrades? And you know, we need also to look at ourselves and our own industry and bring that same sensibility to bear upon ourselves.
Thank you, Fiona. Interesting perspective, holding ourselves accountable. In the interest of time, I'm going to come to you now, Claudia. You bring the ISO TC 207 news leadership perspective, looking at how environmental standards interact with regulation across different jurisdictions. Can you tell us about the study and the main conclusions of the study on environmental standards interaction with regulations across different jurisdictions?
Thank you, Limara. Well, international standards are often described as voluntary tools, but in practice, they frequently play a much broader role in the governance system. In fact, in 2023, ISO published a toolkit called Standard and Public Policy that provide guidance on how international standards can support technical regulation and how national standard bodies can engage more effectively with regulators. One of the key ideas behind this approach is that different types of standards serve different policy function. When policymakers, national standard bodies, and technical experts understand this function, they can collaborate more strategically and significantly accelerate the development and implementation of this legislation. At the same time, alignment between standards themselves is also important. Elements such as objective, language, methodology, structure, and technical approach need to be consistent across standards so that they can be easily referenced and applied within the policy frameworks. Our project looks specifically at how ISO environmental management standards from the ISO 14000 family are referenced in legislation around the world. We discovered three main objectives. The first one will be mapping which ISO standards are currently referenced in environmental legislation. The second one will be suitability. We have to analyze what characteristics make a standard suitable for legislative referencing. And finally, we aim to identify standards that could have significant value for a policymaker, but are still relatively understood or not widely known by regulatory authorities. In many cases, the barrier is not that the tools do not exist, but simply a lack of awareness or familiarity with them. One important insight that emerged from the project is that aligning a standard more closely with legislation can make the work of policymakers more efficient. Because in fact, the problem is that when a standard is developed and then later inform the creation of the legislation, we need to create a new standard for the implementation. So if a standard and policy development were more strategically aligned from the beginning, the regulatory process could become significantly more efficient and coherent. For example, the European Union provides a very interesting example of how this interaction between a standard and legislation work in practice. The EU is widely recognized both for its ambitious environmental legislation and for its strong regulatory enforcement mechanisms. The European Union has several examples, such as the Eco-Management and Audit Scheme, which is the EU Environmental Management Tool. This tool is directly built on the ISO 14001 standard, that is the Environmental Management System standard, and the regulatory framework explicitly references the requirement of ISO 14001. This connection ensures consistency with internationally recognized best practice while allowing the EU to extend its regulatory ambitions. Based on our study, we have several conclusions. First, international standards should not be seen only as a technical document. They are also important governance tools that support the implementation of public policy. Second will be the effectiveness of regulatory frameworks, often depend on how well legislation and standards are aligned. And finally, there is still significant potential to improve collaboration between policymakers, regulators, national standard bodies, and technical experts. Strengthening this collaboration can help ensure that a standard and policy evolve together, creating regulatory frameworks that are both ambitious and practically implementable. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Claudia. The insight I hear is that standards must be co-designed as an integrated system where regulations inform standards and enable not just policy formation, but real-time implementation, verification, and reporting in practice. Miroslav, it's now moved to you. From the perspective of the Climate Change Coalition, where do you see the biggest gap today between sustainability ambition and verifiable environmental outcomes? And how can multi-stakeholders coordination, digital public infrastructure, and trusted governance help close that gap in practice?
Thank you, Limara, for this question, which already includes some of the answers to the question. Actually, multi-stakeholder coordination, digital public infrastructure, and trusted governance innovation are, in my view, certainly the keys to better verifiable environmental outcomes. As an intro, I would like to make clear, of course, that I'm not a standardization expert, so I'm active in the field of connecting local and global with technological innovation and with social innovation. And so I would like to add here following points. So that, as it was mentioned by several speakers already, that the key to really better outcomes, more effective interventions, verifiable environmental outcomes is multi-stakeholder engagement. So it's if we talk about these standards, it's very often it is a discussion for standardization experts, regulators, or big companies, but it's not very often not very much connected with the realities and the decision making of SMEs or of citizens or financiers and so. And so the solution that I see is that we frame this kind of efforts into digital public infrastructure thinking. And also this term has been used by several speakers before me already, also in the session about innovation in this panel. And in terms of digital public infrastructure, it's about digital identity, digital registries, interoperable data exchanges, digital finance platforms, and others. And I believe that the digital product passport is a beautiful example of digital public infrastructure, because it can be the bridge between these regulators and big companies, and also everybody else in the value chain and in the consumption chain also. So it is a trusted layer for multi-stakeholder coordination. And a point that I would like to make here is that it's good to look on what is needed and is possible in the European Union, but when talking about sustainability, about climate, and also global commons like ocean resources also, then we need to think global. And in terms of getting everyone engaged and informed and incentivized. We need to pay attention also to UN processes. UN is in crisis mode. It's almost falling apart, but it would be a pity and also for the EU a big problem if there would be disappearing this global governance. And just to inform you also, and I would like to present the Climate Change Coalition as a bridge builder between the community here in INATBA and UNFCCC process. We have activities in June in Bonn at the Bonn Climate Conference SB64. Then also we have a digital innovation pavilion at the COP31 in Antalya in Turkey in November. And we are also present with an exhibit and one-day conference at the UN headquarters in New York during the New York Climate Week. So if you want to have entry points there, then you are welcome. Last info is that with my second institutional vehicle, Glotcha, we are building solutions for Global Challenges Action ID, a Global Challenges Action Registry, and knowledge collaboration and collective geospatial intelligence tools, challenges mapping, which we are also putting together in an innovative global governance vehicle, a quasi-international organization, blockchain-based organization, just as an info about what we are doing. But I'm not really a standardization expert, and still very grateful that I've been invited to join and to learn.
It's a pleasure to have you here, Miroslav. Thank you for joining us. Now I'm going to open a debate question. As we move towards a verifiable environmental footprint through DPPs, are we still too focused on building the actual architecture and standards while many stakeholders globally, governments, industry, manufacturers, do not fully understand the purpose, the value, and the governance implications of the DPP and the CBAM? Let's kick this off with Reyna.
Thank you, Mara. And this is a great question, and especially for the countries that are outside the European Union, because as ITU, we have seen how we work more with the ICT sector community, and we have seen also how regulators from Latin America or for Africa, they don't know what the digital product passport can bring and how they can use it, for example, and which are the different stakeholders that needs to be involved. And I think this is very crucial. I don't think that we need to stop the standardization or the work that is being done, but I think that there is a work that has to be in parallel, especially as it was explained by Claudia, and it was very nice, her presentation on how standards are a policy tool, because then when the DPP enter into regulation, are the regulators, are the governments that needs to implement the changes, put it in their legislation as well. So all the standards are voluntary based. Therefore, there is a lot of work that still needs to be done on raising awareness on this capacity building, showing how the importance of the digital product passport, but also why it is important that the Global South participate in the standardization work. And they cannot leave this at a later stage thinking that right now is only the discussion of the architecture or only at the European Commission. And this is some of the work that we are also doing as a UN agency and working with other UN as One Planet Network and UNEP, the UN Environmental Program, because we see that it doesn't have to be only one specific entities, but we need to join forces with different entities to also target the different audience that will affect the DPP. Thank you, Limara. Over to you.
Thank you. Over to you, Fiona.
It's a really interesting question. I think maybe from a policy point of view, we might get impatient with industry not understanding needs or not understanding the tempo or timing. But actually, we have to remember that their imperatives or what's important to them is different. It doesn't matter to a business person. They understand the policy and the regulation context, but it's not important to them whether this fully meets a policy. It's whether or not this policy and this implementation, this tool helps me in my business to do business better, faster, in a more efficient way. And I don't want to get lost in the middle. We have to remember in the market, a business that is functional, that is sustainable and delivering services has no problem understanding what a DPP is. You could be in Argentina, Bolivia, you could be, Tanzania, and if you're trading with Europe and you are licensed to do so, you totally understand what the DPP is. It's not a gap. It's just people are hedging whether or not they need to work on it right now. It's a timing issue. Is it valuable to them? Does it make sense right now if we want to extend our market reach into the European markets? And whether or not our ships can get there, right? That is way more influential than whether or not they understand a DPP path, how to complete a process. So let's not get, yes, bureaucracy, yes, digital interfaces have some kind of an overhead, but it's not insurmountable. Business sustainability is the main objective here.
Thank you. It is something that we in SURPASS 2 are actually taking into consideration, the global implementation of the digital product passport and ensuring that different stakeholders can participate. So having very minimal requirements from a technological perspective and looking at other implementation manners so that the DPP really can come to the forefront, especially with the carbon border adjustment mechanism now coming into law. Fiona, would you like to have a couple of words?
Okay, I think that that's a very fair point. In many cases, we are focusing a lot on building the architecture on the technical side, but there is still a gap in terms of understanding and awareness among stakeholders. And not everyone fully understand the purpose of this system or their governance implication, and that can affect how they are adopted in practice. So I think both aspects need to evolve in parallel, not only the technical framework, but also how they are communicated and understood. Thank you.
Thank you. Miroslav, can we have your perspective, please?
So my perspective here is that, as I said, I believe DPP is a very valuable digital public infrastructure. And although I'm not a standardization expert, but here my view that I have and that I would like to contribute is that this is an effort and conceptualization and framework development, which is globally relevant. It can be not only in terms of regulatory compliance, also be taken up also in all other parts of the world. And one thing that I have also in mind is that also EPSI, Reyna has mentioned that she has also working with European Commission on EPSI, European Blockchain Services Infrastructure. This kind of public good-oriented and multi-stakeholder coordination and cooperation facilitating infrastructure that we develop on the European level for public good outcomes, this can be exported or made available to the rest of the world. That's my thinking. And there were some comments on it should be low tech, it should be somehow accessible, of course. And but does that when we develop this kind of things, that we also think how could this be used and adopted really as mainstream also in other parts of the world. That's my thinking when I hear these conversations, and I would be happy to have presentations about this kind of solutions in relevant UN processes at the Digital Innovation Pavilion in November or something like that. That's my thought. It's a little bit on the sides of the main topic, but that popped up in my mind that I would like to share, that this infrastructure solutions, digital infrastructure solutions, EU is pioneering important things, and it can be of value and should be made available to the rest of the world as well.
Thank you. Moving on to another question. If we look at the bigger picture, if the goal is true global adoption of the technology systems that enable a verifiable environmental footprint, what is the missing link? Fiona, I call upon you this time to start off.
Thanks, Limara. Really, really interesting discussion. And just picking up on what Miroslav said about the United Nations and the standardization work that goes on there, and interoperability of, I would say, of language, of terminology. We understand, for example, they're quite high level, but the UN SDGs have been a very effective communication tool for classifying and understanding social objectives within a wider business construct. And some of the work I'm doing at ISO with TC307WG6 is around collecting use cases. And a current project is called New and Emerging Use Cases. And we've separated it out. You asked me this earlier and I avoided answering it, sorry. Separated it into clusters, 3 different clusters, SDG 9, SDG 11, and SDG 16. And this clustering mechanism has allowed us to dive deeper and understand more about common sustainability objectives and how, and it's, blockchains are simple in their purpose, but they're complex in their infrastructure. So I can't really talk about making technology simple so it's accessible in places where there is that barrier that was discussed earlier on, for example, in innovation systems management. I work with complex systems, highly distributed, and they give effective infrastructural support to emerging business economies. One of the use case authors is from Paraguay, and the Paraguayan Blockchain Chamber is building a sustainable, decentralized infrastructure which has been enacted in law. The possibility of that coming about was enacted in law in 2022, and they're building out a sustainable finance ecosystem, a business infrastructure that it will be accessible to all of the business actors to exchange documents, exchange and fund real world assets, to transfer money, all that kind of thing. And we find out about it through international cooperation around use cases in ISO. So the Global South, it's not the only way the Global South is participating in standards information and standards formation. LNet, a number of speakers are already here today, very active around sharing insights and their projects. And they're, of course, very much based in Latin America. Similarly, we have liaison organizations or liaison relationships with GBBC, which is a global business blockchain association, amongst other organizations globally, actively participating, not as standards or policy experts, but as industry stakeholders, building real world systems that are in production, and they are sharing openly in an open way to inform new standards development. This is like from the real world, from the edge, happening and being shared and told and storied and helping in the creation of new emerging standards. So the missing link for me at an event like this is I don't hear enough people talking about the industry part, the real world part. We need forums where everyone is together. It's not just one thing or the other. It can't only be tech. or only be policy or only be industry needs. It's hard to talk together. We need to seek each other out a little bit more.
Thank you for that, Fiona. And you are correct. We do need more forums where we actually have different stakeholders participating. In the fact that we've actually come towards the end of our session, it has gone by so quickly. I'll put a question out to everybody here. By 2030, if the systems we are discussing today succeed, what is one concrete thing that will be possible in environmental accountability that is not possible today? If I could have one concrete answer from each of you, please. Miroslav, we'll start off with you this time.
So I have prepared a statement. By 2030, success would mean that a sustainability claim attached to a product, shipment, or project can be verified across borders in the near real time by regulators, markets, and citizens alike, without each actor having to rebuild trust from scratch.
Succinctly said. Thank you so much. I'll go over to yourself, Claudia.
Well, I think one of the main missing links is alignment at a global level. If a standard regulation and implementation evolve separately, it creates gaps that make this system harder to scale and apply consistently. So for global adoption, it's important to move toward a more coordinated approach where these elements evolve together and support each other. That's what can make this framework not only ambitious, but also practical and effective in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you. Reyna, if we could hear from you now.
So if everything works well and we have a good DPP working, I think one of the big winners will be that we will have the different stakeholders informed that are around the value chain. This will involve the designers, the recyclers, the refurbisher, and even the consumers. Because this is something about the discussion, and I think this will be something that right now we don't have a well-informed supply chain.
Thank you. And finally, but not least.
Perfect. Just to follow on from Reyna, that not only are those stakeholders informed, but they can capture value from their DPP certification and maybe sell and trade it on a carbon marketplace. Fully functioning, well-constructed carbon marketplace.
Thank you.
Very good.
And
that's good.
With that, we come to the end of our discussion. Thank you for all the participants. Thank you for everybody online. It's clear that as we go forward, we will be hearing more from the standard bodies, technology architecture, and we hope, obviously, Claudia, that you will continue to participate. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Limara.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Bye-bye.